My name is Dixie Moreau, and I was raised in all over the United States. I was born in Davenport, Iowa, the third daughter of my wonderful parents. And during that time, we had a lot of pets. Pets were a large part of our household. Never got in trouble. I was always spoiled and got my way, and always got to do whatever I wanted. The story in the family was, give it to her, she's the baby. When I was growing up, my family didn't attend church or discuss religious issues at all. As a matter of fact, my grandfather apparently would run off the preacher with a shotgun if he came onto the property. So we weren't a religious family, to put it mildly. I have two wonderful children, Lorna, who's 41, and Matthew, who's 27 today.
Happy birthday to Matthew.
And then I have a wonderful partner, Gene Sievers, and he has two daughters, Michaela and Jessica, who I love very much.
Oh, we love you too.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us about your former occupations?
Yes, I was in the Air Force, and that's how I got my GI Bill to go to college. And I was a single mom during almost my entire college career. So I'm very proud of what I accomplished. I practiced marriage and family therapy for over 28 years. When I was 19, my first husband and I, he was also in the Air Force. He was a Russian linguist. We lived in Berlin, Germany. And at that time, I joined the First Assembly of God church, and I stayed in that church for probably 20 years. It had a big impact on me. It helped me to study the Bible thoroughly and to read it through at least 3 times from Genesis to Revelations, and lots of Bible studies, but it still left me with a lot of unanswered questions. One of the most important unanswered questions I had was, I was talking to our pastor in a Bible study, and he was talking about, of course, that the only people who get to heaven are people who accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And I said, well, what about people like Gandhi? Are they going to go to hell? And he didn't have an adequate answer for that. It really left me feeling unsatisfied and wanting a more deeper, more compassionate understanding of spirituality. As a therapist, I think the thing that affected me the most deeply was that I worked with severely abused children, and this really made me begin to question why God let children suffer. I had a friend who had a baby die while she was attending church, and the baby was at home with the husband, and the baby got tangled in the cords of the blinds and choked. And it was definitely an accident, and a horrible one. And that really was a turnaround for me, more deeply asking myself, why does God let children suffer? I had a friend who was a nun, and I asked her about it once, and she explained to me about free will, that God gave us free will, and that when that happened, evil came into the world, and we began to make some very bad choices. And that's why children suffer, and that it makes God very sad when children suffer. Now, this comforted me, but it wasn't enough for me to stay with my Christian beliefs. I began more and more to become an agnostic.
That's very interesting. So Dixie, what was it that drew you or kept you coming back to UUFM?
I came to the UUFM in search of people who were open-minded, compassionate, and accepting. I love this congregation. I feel accepted, intellectually stimulated, and I have a group of people that I have fun with. I love the atheists and the Christians and everybody in between.
What was your proudest or happiest moment?
My proudest and happiest moments were definitely when I had my two children, and they also affected my spirituality. Their preciousness. I can remember holding my daughter as a newborn baby and thinking, why does God let babies suffer? I remember thinking that with both my children, and it continued to deepen my agnostic beliefs.
How did your spirituality bring you through a difficult part of your life?
Probably my divorce the first time was very difficult for me, and I was still a Christian and didn't believe in divorce, but the biblical tenets at that time, based on the circumstances of my divorce, allowed me to get a divorce with peace of mind.
Did that have any bearing on your viewpoint about religion or spirituality?
It caused me to continue to question things. And if I prayed a lot, why did these things happen? And if I just prayed enough, maybe they wouldn't happen. I had a client once who was very religious, and I mean religious, but she was also spiritual. And she prayed a lot. And she had to go into the hospital for depression. And that particular issue was the main, I think, some of the crux of her pain, because she also believed that if she just prayed enough, she wouldn't have these problems. Yes.
Do you have any or believe in regret?
I believe in regret. I have two regrets: that I could have been a better parent for both my kids. I think there's not a mother alive that doesn't think that. We all have points where we look back on our parenting and wish I would have done that better. But I did it the best I could. So I'm okay with it. And I've apologized to my children, and they've accepted that, and we're very healthy in that respect.
And have you forgiven yourself for those errors back then?
I think it's still a point that I struggle with.
What does the future hold?
I plan to live with Jean until I pass out from old age. That's my future. My kids are, my daughter is close enough now that I can visit with her regularly. And I know during this difficult time of the COVID-19 that it's a scary time, but I'm not afraid spiritually. That doesn't mean I'm not afraid physically, but spiritually, I feel at peace with my beliefs and what's going to happen to me when I do get old enough to leave the earth.
What would you want your children to know about seeking their own spiritual path?
I've told Lorna and Matthew that whatever they believe and whatever they question is acceptable to me and not going to be judged, that they could question or think in any way spiritually that they choose to believe, and that I'm not going to judge them negatively, that I accept them completely as they are. I love them completely for who they are.
I like that answer.
Kind of something somebody said in fellowship today was that he might be more atheist than he had courage to say, and that's why we sometimes say agnostic. So I would place myself in that similar position with a little Buddhist thrown in. I read a lot of Buddhist readings and believe in what they talk about.
Is there a song or a poem that helps inspire you or that you relate to?
This poem is called "The Day Is Done" by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And it's always been a real comfort to me spiritually and physically. And it's just, to me, it's very lyrical and beautiful. It has something to say about when life is done. The day is done, and the darkness falls from the wings of night as a feather is wafted downward from an eagle in his flight. I see the lights of the village gleam through the rain and the mist, and a feeling of sadness comes over me that my soul cannot resist. A feeling of sadness and longing that is not akin to pain and resembles sorrow only as the mist resembles the rain. Come, read to me some poem, some simple and heartfelt lay that shall soothe this restless feeling and banish the thoughts of day. Not from the grand old masters, not from the bards sublime, whose distant footsteps echo through the corridors of time. For, like strains of martial music, their mighty thoughts suggest life's endless toil and endeavor, and tonight I long for rest. Read from some humbler poet whose songs gushed from his heart as showers from the clouds of summer or tears from the eyelids start. Who through long days of labor and nights devoid of ease, still heard in his soul the music of wonderful melodies. Such songs have power to quiet the restless pulse of care and come like the benediction that follows after prayer. Then read from the treasured volume the poem of thy choice, and lend to the rhyme of the poet the beauty of thy voice. And the night shall be filled with music, and the cares that infest the day shall fold their tents like the Arabs and as silently steal away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Good morning. I'm Gene Sivers. I have two daughters, almost 9 years apart in life, but much, much closer in reality. Over the years, they've been a large part of what's kept me real. One of the things I can credit the fellowship with is that I was initially asked for a dinner date or movie or something. Dixie approached me, and so I think we went to 2 or 3 free concerts in the park and started our dating life along those lines.
Tell us about when or where you were born.
I was supposed to be born November 23rd, but almost 6 weeks earlier than that. And my mom had quite a challenged delivery. And so on October 15th, 1953, the doctor comes out of the surgery room and asks my dad if he should try to save the kid or the mom. I can't see that there was any question to my dad's response with him having a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old girl at home when he replied, the mom. So in spite of circumstances and whatever else that plays into these decisions in the world, I made it anyway, and so did my mother.
Tell us about your family.
It wasn't until we moved to Northwest Kansas to an 8,000-acre ranch, 40 miles from Goodland, Oakley, Colby, and Sharon Springs, that somehow maybe with 5 kids between the ages of 4, 2 4-year-old twins, and 11, my mom felt the need to get religion, maybe. Mom started taking all of us kids to the Methodist church there to learn about the fear of God. With the fear of God as the main impetus, religion didn't make sense to me.
Who was it that impacted your spirituality?
It was Joseph Campbell's Power of Myth. He made it very obvious how the major religions of the world had so many similarities, creation stories, the different myths, And it just was refreshing for me. All through Michaela's public school, I would pick her up after school on Friday. And so one day on the way home from school, I expressed to her that I had been working my guardian angel overtime. And she looked up and she said, "Dad, I didn't know you had a guardian angel." And I just kind of shrugged and said, "I'm here." I think of it as something in maybe a sense of karma, something fairly abstract. I figure when it comes to spirituality, the more I would try to nail it down or pin it down into something specific, the more I would insult the whole thing. I'm convinced that the world around us is mass and energy, and to my understanding, neither one are created or destroyed. I feel comfortable that my energy, where and whatever that is, will be transformed in some way to something else or someplace else. And I'm just going to go with it.
At some point, are you going to tell us about all the pottery behind you?
A couple of my lidded jars, I call them harvest jars, to the sides. There's a teapot or two in there, a larger lidded jar, the celadon green one, and then part of my personal collection, mostly from grad students and potters that I've known over the years. So in 1981, I thought to get back into clay, I would apply for a graduate degree in ceramics. One of my teachers from undergraduate school accompanied me to talk with Professor Yoshi Ikeda, and he looked over my work and said, "That's not good enough." And Judy piped up, "But he'll work hard." And Yoshi said, "Okay, that's good enough." I see my pottery as an integral part of my spirituality because a major influence from Yoshi, a Japanese American, was tied in with the history of pottery from the Oriental world and Zen Buddhism. I'll segue into my artist statement from this catalog for this piece. Porcelain and white stoneware are the clay bodies of choice for my utilitarian, wheel-thrown, and altered pottery. An off-white surface allows for a wide glaze palette. My raku pots are fired with an off-white glaze, so the fractal patterns interact with the contours of the form. I strive for my pots to exude a quiescent grace and elegance of movement, exploring the space in and around them with a dancer's proprioception. I consider the parameters of utility as challenges to be solved along with my aesthetic concerns, searching for organic or figurative decorative forms. The UUF here in Manhattan, specifically, I've gotten involved with the chalice circles, the men's Wednesday lunch group, where I'm hanging out with the older guys so that some of the wisdom maybe will rub off. The rhythm of the Sunday service is kind of a reset, a weekly reset in life for me.
Describe one of your spiritual experiences.
Probably the most spiritual experience I've had in my life would be the birth of my two daughters. And there's just nothing that rivals it, really. It's amazing how that experience completely transformed who I was, how I approached life, and daily activity and goals, if you take note of it. Music has been my escape, or my venue to go to for my whole life. One of my favorite artists, singer-songwriters, is John Prine. With one of my favorite songs being "Angel from Memory." His lyrics are just amazing, and he has a knack for portraying the emotion or the life experience or whatever it is he's trying to get to the depths of, without just coming out and saying it, and yet saying it so effectively in a way that's amazing for words to be able to convey. But I'd be the first to admit that "When I Get to Heaven" is not the best song he's ever written, but it was one of the last. About 3 years ago, John's wife, his third wife, Fiona, and one of their sons told John he needed to record another album. And so he worked away for a week or two, and he had he considered that he had 9 songs. And he's kind of thinking, well, darn, I really need one more. And he got to thinking. He had, over the years, indirectly written a happy song for when he was done with the work for an album. And so he took the chorus of his happy song and turned it into the "When I Get to Heaven" for the last song on his last album.